Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Operation Missed podcast, where we bring beautiful guests on to help you show up to pregnancy as healthy as possible, go throughout pregnancy without running into unnecessary complications, and then recover well following delivery. And today, I am super excited that we have this beautiful woman by the name of Dr. Leneice Beasley on with us, and she has a miraculous and beautiful birth story. And so we knew that we had to have her on. Not a lot of people carry with multiples or do so in an untraditional setting, but she did both. And so we just want to hear how she did it so that if someone is going through this journey or you're a provider who's supporting someone who's going through this journey, then you can have some tips and tricks to make sure that the person that you're supporting has the best experience possible. So with that, Dr. Beasley, will you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so my name is Leneice. I've been an occupational therapist, a doctor of occupational therapy, only for a few months. I just graduated actually in December. So I was carrying twins, working full time, going to school, and doing all the things.
Oh,
And we made it, Lord, we made it. So yeah, I've been in OT for 6 years now. And I'm looking to kind of tap into the perinatal space now. I've practiced in home health, inpatient, outpatient, long-term acute care, skilled nursing. And I think my heart is lying with the perinatal community for sure. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and I appreciate you inviting me on the podcast today.
absolutely. And congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you're anything like me, a part or all of your birth journey may have led you to loving the perinatal population. And so I would love for us to just jump right into it. So tell us about your first birth because you had three precious babies,
I
correct?
do. I have three
Okay.
kiddos. My
Okay.
oldest is actually about to be 4 this month in 27 days. His birthday is the 28th. And so after when I got pregnant with him, I was actually told prior to getting pregnant, I was having some issues. I eventually ended up getting diagnosed with PCOS after going to the doctor to try to figure out what was going on. And they were like, well, we want to start you on this medication to help you ovulate. And I was like, no, I'll do something natural to try to get my body working and going. And I did. I did not realize that by what I was doing, I would end up pregnant several months later. So what I did worked. And so I
Yes.
ended up pregnant with him. I found out I was pregnant in January of 19, had him in September of 2019. And that first pregnancy, I started out under the care of an OB, but it was kind of like a rush OB situation, somebody I just found because I was like, oh, I need a doctor now. And I was already looking for a doctor, but I drug my feet on it because I figured I had time to look for one. I did not.
Yeah.
so so when I got pregnant, I was like, okay, let me just go to the person that's nearest to me and the reviews are good, right? So I went to him and he was fine. He was great, but I did not really like the quickness of my appointments. I felt a little bit rushed. I felt like I spent more time waiting than I actually spent communicating. And that made me uncomfortable. And I had already kind of been thinking, like, I think I may want to have like a natural birth. I had been reading a lot about natural birth. I had friends that had done it, and natural meaning unmedicated. And so I said, okay, I'm going to talk to my husband about this. I think I want to be under the care of a midwife.
Mhm.
So he was a little bit in the beginning, he was a little bit skeptical because here we are, we're trying to have a baby. He's not really familiar with people just having babies at home or in a birthing center and, just the scary of the unknown, so to speak. But after we met with the midwife, we tried one place that we interviewed and we fell in love with that place and fell in love with that midwife. And yeah, I started my care under her. We had prayed about it and felt
Mhm.
like we were both at peace with the situation. And so I set out to birth at the birthing center with my first baby. So I don't know, do you want me to keep going into like the whole birth and labor and delivery part too?
Well, I want you to, but I did have a question for you. When
Yeah.
you were diagnosed with PCOS and you said that what you did helped, what did you
Mhm.
do?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't share that part. I I don't know if anybody's heard, but Plexus. It is a natural supplement, and it comprises of a drink, a probiotic, and a magnesium supplement. So all three products together are designed to rid your gut of bad bacteria and then replace it with good bacteria.
Okay.
So if anybody, doesn't know anything about PCOS, it is a hormonal issue, and a lot of our hormonal issues lie in our gut, having bad gut health. So essentially that's what it did. It just eliminated all the bad stuff, replaced it with the good stuff, and it ended up balancing out my hormones naturally. I think I started taking it around September of 2018, consistently, September 2018. And then by January, I was pregnant. But by like the end of October, I noticed I started ovulating, and I read into the signs of, checking cervical mucus and being able to understand what's ovulation, what's not. And I noticed that those changes were occurring. I just did not realize, like I said, that I was going to end up getting pregnant so quickly, because for me, that felt like a very short time,
Yes.
like October to January, and now I'm pregnant. That wasn't intentional, but it let me know that those products really did help with balancing out my hormones so that I could ovulate naturally.
I love that you shared that, because there are some things that are not, and I don't know about Plexus in terms of the research and things like that, but a lot of times we rely very heavily on what we think works, on what the medical system says. And if it's not FDA approved, then we're not, looking at it. And so I love for people to share what they've done that may be against the grain or out of the ordinary, because if it worked for you, then it may work for somebody else who's kind of at the end of their rope. So thank you for sharing. Okay. And then, yes, we do. Of course, we want you to jump into this delivery. You just told us about your bravery of going outside of the hospital setting potentially. So yes, what happened with this midwife?
So this midwife was great. I actually have been getting told, and I think they probably tell a lot of first time moms this, it's likely that you're going to go over 40 weeks. Your water probably won't break, all these things. And mine broke. First thing, I broke at 39 weeks and 1 day. And then I was early, obviously. I didn't go to full 40. And so I did not realize, though, that by that happening, my water breaking, that is what I mean by that happening. When my water broke and I was laboring at home, doing all the things to try to get things like going, it took several hours for my contractions to really start, even after my water broke. But once it did, I was like, okay, these are feeling pretty intense and pretty consistent. But I was getting told, well, just hold off. Because you might be in it for the long haul. Usually first time moms, it may take 48 hours, before the baby gets here. So I was doing things to get the contractions more productive, but I was also trying to take heed to what the backup midwife, because my midwife just happened to be out of town. So what the backup midwife was telling me to just get some rest and rest up. So I think that kind of stalled me a little bit. But by the time I felt the need to go to the birth center to get checked officially to see where we were, it had been over 24 hours that my water had been broken.
Okay.
And so when I get there, it's 5 a.m. Would they checking me? I think I'm like 5 centimeters. I'm like, okay, that's not too bad. Let's see, let's keep going. By 9 a.m., the backup midwife came in and told me, hey, so we need to talk about whether you want to be transferred to the hospital as an emergency, or if you want to do an elective transfer. And I was like, for what? And she said, well, we really want the baby to be here within 36 hours after your water breaks. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't communicated to me. I didn't know that.
Right.
So that being in my mind, looking back, of course, hindsight is 2020, but looking back, I think it stalled me mentally because I felt defeated at that point. I'm like, oh, I'm about to get transferred to the hospital. They're going to try to do a C-section on me. I just had this negative, thinking about the situation, and already coming from home and going to the birth center was like a 25-minute drive. And then having to go from the birth center to the hospital, which was like another 25, 30-minute drive. I was miserable. Having contractions, is a very tough thing, but to do it in a car, it was even more intense. And so by the time I made it to the hospital, I think it was probably around 2 p.m. or so. No, it was like 11 a.m. actually. Because I was ready to get away from that particular midwife, I'm not gonna lie. Because I felt so much negative energy in that space, and I was just ready to leave. And it wasn't her, it was just the experience and the way it was communicated to me. I just felt like I don't want to be around you right now. I'm mad that things aren't going the way I wanted to go. So let's hurry up and get to the hospital. So when I did, I tried again to labor unmedicated at the hospital. The midwife on call was great. She was super supportive of what I needed. And that was another reason why I chose to go there, because I knew they had midwives on call. I live in a Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I chose to go to Baylor, and where I know for sure they do have midwives, and that was closest to me at the time. So by the time 2 p.m., 3 p.m. rolled around and I was only like 7 centimeters, I was spent. It had been, well, we were well into the 36-hour mark, and I was tired. I had not eaten. I had not slept. It was a rough time. So I said, and my body started pushing on its own, but I wasn't fully dilated. So I felt like, why is my body just pushing? And they kept telling me to stop. And I was like, I'm not, trying to do this. So needless to say, I elected to get an epidural. And I will say my anesthesiologist was great. He was super patient, warm, at bedside. I was nervous about that because you hear so many stories about Black women in these settings and delivering, that I was scared I was going to end up as a statistic, honestly. And so to have him be very warm and very kind, that was a beautiful thing. And he even came and checked on me the next day. And he said he was going to. I didn't believe it. I'm not going to lie. I was such a skeptic. I did not think he was going to come back. But he came, he made his rounds, and he checked in and was very kind. I did not have any complications after getting the epidural. Baby still waited like 4 more hours to fully be ready to come on out. And we pushed him out, and he was here. He was healthy. I was healthy. I didn't have any postpartum hemorrhaging or anything like that. And overall, my hospital stay was pretty decent. I mean, I don't have any complaints about that. Going into it though, like I said, I was so skeptical and nervous because I just did not, I wanted to leave home. Leave the hospital and go home with my baby. I didn't want my husband to, end up being a single parent. I just didn't know. How it was going to go. And so that's really why I chose the midwifery route that first go round. So yeah, it was a journey that first time, but I think it was what the Lord knew that I needed to get me to trust him, and trust that not all experiences in the hospital are bad experiences. Mm-hmm. And little did I know, of course the Lord knew, but little did I know that I would end up pregnant with twins 3.5 years later.
Yeah. Well, I love that you shared your first story, because there are a lot of people who are afraid of the transfer. Just like you get that in your mind that this is really not what I wanted. And sometimes that can throw off your body's rhythm and progress. But I love to hear a successful outcome, that it wasn't a traumatic experience. It did not turn into a C-section delivery. You were still able to get midwives to support you. And so it's beautiful. I think that people think that birthing in a birthing center and at home are a huge risk, when really, when you look at the statistics, hospital births are a risk. Right? Every birth carries risk. And as long as you have a good backup plan, like you did, then you could still have the type of birth that you desired. I love that. And it's good. What helped you say yes to the epidural? I know that you said yes, but was it because you were tired and just needed the rest?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of being tired, a little bit of defeat too, because I feel like I had been at it for so long. And then looking back, if I'm honest, I really think that seeing the fear of some of my family around me, mainly my mom, love her, but I knew she was getting concerned. And I was like, oh, my mama concerned. Maybe I need to be concerned. Like she's had a child before, so maybe I need to trust her face. Okay. So I was like, maybe I should just go ahead, and get this epidural. And I did have a doula, and my doula was great. But I think my doula might have been just as frustrated in the situation as I was, because she knew what my goal was, and she felt like I wasn't really prepared for what could happen if my water broke prior to my contractions starting. Right. And that was one thing that I was disappointed about, was just that I don't remember there really being a conversation about, well, what happens when your water breaks? How long do I have before the baby gets here? And I've come to learn now that as when you birth in a birthing center and then choose to birth at home, there's a little bit more leeway that are given to moms birthing at home versus in the birth center, because there's certain rules that they have to follow. And so because I was choosing to birth at a birth center, they had to be a little bit more strict on their rules with my water breaking prior to contraction starting. Yes. And I wish I would have known that.
Right, prior, and you never know what questions to ask unless you have someone kind of feeding you the questions, right? Right. So we're huge on that, just asking as many questions as possible and about every scenario possible. Because now that you know, and people listening to the podcast, they'll know, because policies are different. In other countries, they can wait up to 5 days after their water breaks, as long as they don't have any signs of infection or anything going wrong. And they have studies that show that their outcomes are fine when that happens. Sometimes outcomes are not fine. And so women just have to know what their risk is so that the decision they're making is truly informed. And I think that the only thing that I would say about that first experience is that decision to go to the hospital was not an informed decision. You were informed that you had to go. It wasn't something that you chose, but it's really good that you ended up with a fantastic outcome. Okay, so flash forward. So we get pregnant.
Yes.
Later.
So I found out I was pregnant again, July of last year. And no, June of last year. When I went to get my sonogram to be able to figure out how far along I was, is when I found out it was twins. So here we go, fast forward to like mid-July. And I'm thinking we're going to go in there and see one baby, kind of. Now, I will tell you this, because I don't know if I told you this before, but prior to the day of the sonogram, I told my husband and my mom, I said, I feel like there's more than one baby. Wow. And it was a couple of things. The Holy Spirit, one, but two, I felt different. Like I think probably other twin moms can attest to this, but you feel bigger. Then like things are just expanding very quickly. And I was like, well, maybe this is because it's the second pregnancy. That's why I'm feeling things a lot sooner, because I know what it feels like. But there was just this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. No, this feels very strange. Like I feel very bloated too early. Like it's only week 4, I think. And I don't know like why I'm feeling like this. So of course it gets confirmed that it's twins. And immediately I felt like my plan to have a home birth has to change, because I'd already told myself if I ever have another child, I want to have a home birth, because I don't want to get in any cars. I don't want to travel. Like that messes up your mojo. It's like you get to going and you're focused, and then having to get in and out of a car and doing it was just a lot. So I said, if I have another kid, I want to have a home birth. The moment I found out it was twins, I talked to my midwife and I said, so we can't do this no more? Like we can't do this home birth? And she was like, yeah, you can do it. And one thing that I just love, her name is Meredith Bialas, and I just love her so much. But I said, she told me, she said, do not let this change your plan and what it is that you desire for yourself. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm gonna have to, because she's like, you're gonna have to pray about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to pray about it. So I prayed and prayed and prayed. And I was explaining to my husband, man, I just don't see much out there about people having twins at home. I don't know anybody that's done it. Everybody that I know that has had twins has had a C-section, except for my sister-in-law. She did deliver vaginally. And so she gave me some hope, just knowing that she delivered vaginally and at the hospital. But nevertheless, she had a vaginal birth. And I said, okay, I know it can be done. I just need to really focus on the positive. And so my midwife was really great in that any question that I had, because it was a twin pregnancy, if she didn't know the answer, she was researching. And she was really good about making sure that she was as informed as she needed to be. I think I might have been her second twin twin mom. And her first twin mom ended up delivering at the hospital unmedicated, but she her water broke at 35 weeks. And my midwife's hard and fast rule was the baby's got to stay baking until 37. She said if anything happens before 37, we have to go to the hospital. There's, just too many risks. She said you can still have an unmedicated, delivery, but it will be safer for you and the babies for you to deliver at the hospital. And so I knew, like, okay, great. I know that if anything happens before 37 weeks, we're headed to the hospital. I already know where I'm going to go. I had a good experience there. There are midwives on staff there. And for anybody who may be watching this that is currently pregnant with twins, and I know here, and I don't know if this is a standard across the board, even though I assume it is, you might, if you choose to deliver at the hospital, they might want you to deliver in the operating room. Because if baby B flips, or if baby A flips, or if something starts happening with heart rate or just anything, they want to be in an environment where they can do a C-section if they need to. But the thought of that for me was a little bit nerve-wracking, because I'm like, okay, I would have to deliver in an operating room, which means they're really setting me up and setting the environment up for a C-section if needed. And so I was like, Lord, I really want to avoid that at all costs. So I will say nutrition, being pregnant with twins, I had to consume 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. And that was intense because I didn't have much of an appetite my first trimester. So I didn't throw up. I wasn't having like HG or anything, but I just wasn't hungry. And you would think, oh, you're pregnant with twins, you should be hungry. I was not. I didn't really get my appetite until like 15, 16 weeks.
So you got no room in your stomach to be hungry.
No room. I was like, how in the world am I going to get this in? And so protein shakes saved my life. I was just constantly drinking as much as I could that I knew had 30 grams of protein plus. And I had to make sure I had enough iron. Things do change when you're pregnant with multiples, just in terms of what you're consuming and what you're doing. And I was still working full time as an OT, but thankfully in an outpatient setting. So all of my treatments were mostly sitting. But by week 20, I'm already looking like I'm 30 weeks. And I'm having to figure out body mechanics and learn these changes, how to navigate still being a therapist while being pregnant with these two babies. So fast forward to, I made it to 37 weeks. Thank the Lord. I'm at home. I'm like, okay, great. It's go time. Let's get these babies out. And I was like, Operation Let's Go. I'm tired of being pregnant. Let's make this happen. Let's see what we got to do. So I was trying a lot of things to try to get them here, and it wasn't working. So about a couple of days before my water broke, I think I had finally made peace with, they're going to come when they're ready. Yeah. The Lord has allowed me to make it to 37 weeks. So we're in the clear to have these babies at home. And 38 weeks, one day, or 38 weeks, 2 days, my water breaks. 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. And my oldest had already gone off to school. My husband came back with breakfast for me. And I ate breakfast. Still really weren't feeling any contractions. Around 12 p.m., things picked up. I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little something. By 1 o'clock, they were full on, like stacking on top of each other. And I think I was in a little bit of denial at how quickly things were progressing, because my first pregnancy had been so different. Right. And I knew, this being a second pregnancy, things could go much quicker, but I was not expecting it to move that fast. So by 2:45, my doula comes. Dr. Jazz, love you if you're watching this. She's also a chiropractor. And she was like, oh, how far apart are the contractions? And I'm like stopping her, like, just wait, let me get through this one. And my mom is like, do you think you need to call Meredith? And I said, well, I don't think so yet. It's just, I don't think so. She said, I don't know, Leneice, I think you need to call. So when Dr. Jazz comes, I say, I haven't even been able to time for like the last 30 minutes.
Wow.
And when I said it, I was like, I haven't been able to time them because they've been coming on top of each other. So maybe things are getting pretty intense. By 3:00, I am on the floor, hands and knees, my body's pushing.
Wow.
And I'm like, the only person here right now is my doula, my mama, and my husband. What are we about to do? And I tell my doula, I said, is she coming out? Because I already knew my baby girl was coming first. And so she was baby A. And so I'm feeling my body push, and I'm like, am I crowning? Like, what is happening? And she's like, no, I don't see anything, but let me get, Meredith on the phone. And Meredith was like, I'm only like 10 minutes away. And so she's having her check to make sure she doesn't see anything. By the time Meredith gets in here and she checks me, I am 9 centimeters. And I was like, oh, it's go time for real.
Yeah.
So I think I pushed for about an hour. I did not realize, none of us did until Joy came out, that she was kind of positioned funky in my pelvis. And so, and the cord was wrapped around her neck when she came out. So my pushing took a while. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, she got here. And I remember just being so elated that I did it. Like, I was like, I did it. And then it clicked. And I think I said it out loud, I got to do this again. I started getting a little bit emotional because I'm like, I got to do this all over again. And they were like, stop focusing on that. Just focus on this moment. Yeah. And so I did. And my husband, we let the umbilical cord stay until it turned, clear. And he cut it. He had her. And I was back on my side with a peanut ball, getting ready to push out baby boy.
Wow.
And so we managed to move from the floor to the bed. And 46 minutes later, here comes baby boy. And I would just remember bawling. The first, when Joy came out, I was bawling. And I just kept saying, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Because the whole time of my pregnancy, I was just so concerned that things were not going to go the way I was hoping they would go, with it being twins. And, as soon as somebody tells you that they're pregnant with twins, I think a lot of people just assume, oh, so, when are you gonna, have a C-section? Are you gonna have a C-section? Are you gonna do this? And I was just like, no, I'm having a home birth. And I prayed, and I was really diligent about, throughout my whole pregnancy, making sure that I was prepping myself mentally, spiritually, and physically for birth. Mm-hmm. And I did that, one, in prayer, but two, I did a lot of exercises on a ball. I did a lot of pelvic floor therapy, just trying to understand like what's going on in my body. Why am I feeling these pains that I'm feeling? And making sure that I'm moving my body appropriately to decrease the pain. Because when you're pregnant with one, it's a lot on your pelvis, but being pregnant with two, it was a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to make sure that my body was being prepared for that. But then my mental, I used the Christian hypnobirthing app. And I was really diligent about listening to the prompts on the app. And she really just kind of takes you through a meditation, and it's all scripture based, and it helped frame my mindset to think positive the entire time. So I used that, and I was diligent about going to sleep with it, playing in my ear. And then I would also kind of do it throughout the day when I was at home, just kind of waiting for babies to come. I was just doing it throughout the day to make sure that my mind stayed focused on the positive things, and that I was completely relaxed and at peace. And I honestly feel like doing that is what helped me have a quicker progressing labor, because I was relaxed. Yeah. I listened to a mixture of my hypnobirthing playlist and then my own worship music playlist throughout my contractions. And In order to make sure I was breathing, I was singing. Um, and one thing I've always told patients as a therapist is like, if you count out loud, that's how I know you're not holding your breath, right? So if I sung, I wasn't able to hold my breath. I could breathe through things. And I
Mm.
really think that just having that level of peace and being able to relax was helpful for me. And it was exactly what my body needed in order to get babies here safely. Um, yeah, and I will say another thing before, because I don't want to keep talking. I want you to be able to, respond. But one thing I will say that my midwife was really great at doing was making sure that we had a plan to decrease any risk of hemorrhaging, because the uterus expands so big when you're pregnant with multiples. That was a really big risk, and that I was taking by having them at home. And so the plan was for there to be Pitocin administered pretty much throughout the whole labor, just to kind of make sure that my uterus starts contracting and I can push the placenta out and we don't have a ton of bleeding. And that plan worked. I remember them just sticking me in my leg a couple of times throughout labor to get things continuing to go and to get my uterus to continue to contract. And I didn't have any issues at all postpartum with bleeding or my uterus not shrinking quick enough. And I don't want to say quick enough in a bad way, but like it wasn't, it was going the way that it was supposed to go, and I was progressing the way that I needed to. It wasn't slow or anything that was alarming to my midwife or me throughout my postpartum process.
I love all of this, and I love all the tips that you are giving along the way. I love the support of your midwife. And at the very beginning, when you started talking about her and you said that she helped you get your mindset right from the beginning, do not feel like you have to change your plans just because something you didn't plan for happened, right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think this is believe it or not, this is the third podcast conversation that I've had this week. And it's the first time since starting Operation Mist that I've had 3 in a week. And what is common amongst all of your stories is the power of words, the power
Mhm.
of words and the power of providers speaking life over you. And
Mhm.
it's such a beautiful thing to witness, to be a part of, to experience. That was my experience. I had a wonderful midwife. She spoke life into me, and I believe that's why my daughter is here safely. I think that providers sometimes, don't know the power that they hold, good or bad, right?
Mhm.
And so you just happen to have been surrounded by angels who
Absolutely.
helped you to achieve your journey, your goal. And I just think it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then the use of Pitocin, I love that you threw that in there, because a lot of times when we hear about Pitocin use, the experience is not positive. A lot of times, people feel the contractions, they're super painful, they're super close together, they can't get a breather. But if they have providers who administer it as needed, like yours did,
Mhm.
and planned it and did it in a way that went with your body's natural rhythm, she just let you be the guide and let the Pitocin be the complement, as opposed to the Pitocin being the guide and then your body
Mhm.
having to catch up. And so it's really nice that you threw that in there as well. And then the other thing, 46 minutes later. So thank you for sharing that. Some people, think it's like baby drops, then second baby drops, and it's right back to back. But it is the mental marathon.
Mhm.
And you were prepped for it though. The hypno,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
gospel music, the peace.
Mhm.
You are absolutely right. I just think mindset is everything, and you protected your mindset. And then only other thing I wanted to say is when you said that your sister-in-law did it, I think that's all we need is one person that we
One.
know did it, right? That we can refer back to, because a lot of women who say, I want to birth at home, they're surrounded by women who birthed in the hospital. Other people
Mhm.
who want a natural birth in the hospital, they're talking to people who had medicated births in the hospital.
Mhm.
So if we just match women appropriately, and that's what we love doing. That's why I love doing these conversations. When you told me you had a vaginal birth with twins at home, I was like, okay, I don't care what I have to do. We need her on the podcast, because we use these podcasts not to grow an audience, but to share
Mhm.
it with the audience who needs it.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
now when someone comes to Operation Miss, if they're pregnant with twins, the first podcast episode they'll be getting is yours, regardless of whether it's dropped to the public or not, because we need a guidebook. We need a blueprint. We need a family, a community that can help us get to where they've already been before.
Right.
And so I appreciate all the details that you gave, because
Absolutely.
I just feel like you birthed beautiful.
There are two things I wanted to say too, and I forgot to mention was just that the Pitocin, me and my midwife had a discussion during our birth plan meeting, how we wanted to go about administering Pitocin, because she already told me that I really want to do this because your risk of hemorrhaging is higher. Like, that's just statistically, it just is. So, but we can talk about how we want to go about administering it. So I had an option for them to kind of do it throughout, or for them to kind of wait and we can do it, after. And I was like, no, we can do it throughout. Let's just play it safe. And of course, that was her recommendation, but she also gave me options, and we discussed it and we made the decision together. And that's just one of the things that I feel like is so important, is finding a care provider that will allow you to be a part of your process. Like, that's important. Oftentimes I think people look at that provider-patient relationship as kind of this hierarchy, and really it should be a partnership. Yeah. It's not anybody making decisions over, the provider doesn't make decisions for you. You guys make them together. And I think that is really what allowed me to have such a peaceful experience, because I was supported by people who were supporting my plan and my goal. I will say not my plan, but my goal. And they wanted to do everything that they could to help me meet that goal. Yeah. The second thing I wanted to say was just that prior to going into labor, Summer Walker, the R&B singer, had just come out and shared that she delivered twins at home and didn't have any tearing. That was my situation too. I had no tearing. And I was just like, oh, she can do this. I'm gonna do it. So that was all I needed to hear. Like, this can be done. And I was so thankful. And it's just crazy, like the little small things that happen in the world that I wouldn't have ever thought. She never shared she was pregnant with twins. Yeah. So I knew she was pregnant, but she never shared she was pregnant with twins. And then for her to share, like, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks before I gave birth, that she had successfully delivered her twins at home in 7 hours with no tearing and this and that. And I said, oh yeah, like, we're gonna do this.
Yes.
I was so excited to see that. And it really gave me a nudge, like, okay, you can do this. Like, it can be done. And seeing that she is a Black woman, I had seen pictures and videos of other women doing it, like on YouTube, but none of them were women of color. None of them were Black. And I was like, no, like, I needed that, yes. But it was just something about hearing her story as a Black woman that really gave me a sense of empowerment too, that I could do this. Yeah. And I was so thankful that she shared that, because she didn't have to share that with the world, but she did. And I was thankful for that, for sure.
Well, and you don't have to share this with the world, and you are, and I'm thankful for it, because she's a celebrity. So some people may say, well, she's a celebrity. She had all the things that she needed to have. She, even though celebrity status does not inoculate you from what's going on with this crisis, right? But I would say that what is common with your story and other stories that I've heard, honestly, is plan, people, prayer, peace, right? Plan, people, prayer, peace. And you had all four. And so it was just the likelihood of something not going right. Yeah. Very, very low.
Very low.
Right.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Okay. So now you have your sweet babies here.
I do.
How was the postpartum journey with 3? How was it going from 1 to 3? And can you give any tips and tricks for people? Because everybody needs to hear who even has more than one. And then we'll wrap up after that.
Yeah. So, all those 4 P's, you're gonna need those postpartum as well. Let's just start there. You're gonna need that postpartum. I will say that I feel like my baby blues hit a lot harder, which makes sense because those hormones were way higher And so the crash was intense. And so I suffered from a little bit of postpartum anxiety, which can look like postpartum depression, but it's really more so like this incessant like worrying about something happening. And it was so bad this time that I was like, I told my husband, I can laugh about it now. It was not funny then. But I said, I just want to be pregnant again. Being pregnant, being pregnant was easier than the way I'm feeling right now. And he was like, what?
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's how bad I feel, but it was just because it was a lot. It's a lot caring for 2 newborns and still having to care for a 3-year-old who needs you. Their whole world now has been, shaken up. And so I felt like I couldn't give him what he needed. And looking back, he was just fine. It was more so me, just feeling like I have a lot to manage now. How am I going to do this? So my biggest advice would be to really prepare. If you have loved ones around you or can get loved ones around you, prepare them to be like at your every beck and call. Seriously. I think what I needed was, and my family came through for me because they realized like she's going through it. And I'm not the type to ask for help. I really struggle with that. But my mom was like, do you need help, Leneice? I will come help you. So she planned to help me, even though she was still working. She was like in the other room, and just knowing that she was around was helpful.
Yes.
My grandmother was here. They started like a little bit of a rotation where my aunt and uncle would kind of come in and help here and there. And so being able to have people just kind of in and out that are people that will not interrupt your peace, because I want to chime in on that part. You can have people that want to offer you help, but if they're going to be a disruption to you being at peace throughout the postpartum process, maybe not those people, but people that allow you to kind of have a calm spirit and keep a calm spirit and during postpartum. Very important. Having meals prepped or having people bring you food. Honestly, feeding multiples, it would have been nice for somebody to feed me while I was nursing. But I just had to take what I could get, and if that just meant you bringing me the food, I'm fine with it too. So, because your hands are full, honestly, your hands are just full trying to navigate nursing or however you feed your babies, 2 babies at one time. So really just kind of having a game plan with that postpartum would be super helpful. And then making sure that you have what you need at bedside. Which you would do with 1 baby, same thing you would do with 2 babies, just having double pretty much of what you would need bedside, so you can just minimize the getting up and moving around a lot. Because I did notice when I didn't rest, my bleeding picked up. And I did bleed a lot longer this time than I did with my first. Understandably, so I was aware of that, and I made sure like to listen to my body, and my midwife was great about coming to me versus me going out postpartum as well. So if you have a midwife that can continue to just come to you kind of that first 6 weeks or so, that's great. It'll be great for your healing big time. Let me see what else postpartum wise. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the biggest thing is just making sure you have a good plan for people to support you with meals, and really just anything that you may need, even if it's just for them to take the oldest child or children out to do things. My son never skipped a beat spending time with his great grandfather.
Wow.
So they were kind of on pickup duty. My husband was on drop off duty, and my grandparents were on pickup duty for picking up my baby. And so it helped just alleviate some of that stress and things that I might have been worried about in the back of my mind. Yeah, and just really having a good support system of friends, people that you can lean on and talk to. Other women, especially, that you can lean on and talk to about just what you're feeling, postpartum. And I definitely have that and still have that. Other moms that I can, just chime in and share my frustrations or, just anything with, goods and bads. So,
Yes. Well, I just want to say, when I first heard a snippet of your story, I was like, if we are able to instill that kind of confidence and faith in every woman that becomes a part of Operation Mist, even a fraction of it, right? then we will have done a really, really good job. And so I am grateful for you, grateful for your story, for you being willing to share your story. I'm so grateful that our paths crossed
Yes,
and that you wanted to enter and want to enter the perinatal space and support women in this way. Because I think that the greatest barrier to fighting the maternal health crisis is women not knowing their bodies and not trusting its innate ability to give birth. And
yes,
once we get back to that trust, then we'll be able to make more informed decisions, choose the right provider, not make decisions out of fear. All of the things that you did can be recreated, replicated in other people if they just believe that. And so it is great that this is documented. I'm grateful for you and your time. And I look forward to us working together in the future and me
absolutely.
being able to watch you love on women as you were loved on during your journey. So
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Catherine. I am so elated to be a part of this. Truly, I really am. I'm so glad our paths crossed as well. And I'm excited for what the future has to hold. I feel like I found a good friend and a confidant in you in just what you're doing. So shout out to you for everything that you're doing to help with this crisis because it is so needed. And to anybody watching this, you are loved, and you have people that are willing to serve you and help you and give you the best care, and give you the information that you need to get the best care that you deserve. So I'm excited and I appreciate this time with you.
thank you.